Hello. In this part of your weekly work, we're going to look at human activities in California grasslands, which is right here. And the assignment looks like this. Right here, which should be in your weekly work. So we are going to attempt to make this in less than 10 minutes. So let's get started. Human activities in the California grasslands. Evidence for ecosystem change from primary sources. So you should have your assignment in front of you. And the first thing is, this is about evidence for ecosystem change. So again, we're using evidence from primary sources to look for ecosystem change in the grasslands. So primary sources provide information about how grasslands have changed in California since European settlements. And these sources can include writings. Let me get my laser pointer here. These can include writings, they can include drawings or photographs. So it could be journals, or they could be drawings of a land area and their usage done by the state or by local landowners, or they could be photographs of an area. So I think you're supposed to write down 3 of these. Yep, there's 3 types of primary sources that were used as evidence in how grasslands have changed. So write down writings, drawings, and photographs. Primary source evidence of ecosystem change in grasslands. So list 3 types of primary sources that were used for evidence about how grasslands have changed. So one of the first sources again is writings, and so that is one of your primary sources, and we're going to be looking at these in detail, and then we'll be recording them. So early writings might mention the kinds of plants in an area. Early writings might mention the kinds of activities in an area: farming, grazing of cattle or sheep, burning of the lands to remove trees and shrubs, which is what the Indians did. Drawings of the same area at different times. Drawings of the same area at different times can show changes in the land over time. So this drawing shows water resources areas for farming and plant composition, which was made by a landowner. And then this one was made by a U.S. surveyor. All right, this drawing gives details of the types of plants farmed. So you can have a change, and you can see the change based on drawings that were made. So again, you should be listing 3 types of primary sources. So drawings was one. The first one was also writings. Photographs can provide information about specific species that were present at a site in the past that may or may not be there today. So this is the same area as this, just different view. This is an aerial view and this is a land view, but it is both the San Ramon Valley. And before 1980, the San Ramon Valley was mostly grasslands, and then urban development has slowly encroached on it. And you can see that same thing happening around this area. If you know where Highway 4 is, looking out at Mount Diablo, right there by Home Depot, you know that there are new housing developments going in there. And that used to be a farmland and a grassland. And now it is turning into an urban development with the Mount Diablo in the background. So those 3 types of primary sources. So this is the 3rd type. So you have been doing that. So we have photographs, we have writings, and we have drawings. Photographs can also provide information about specific species that were removed. So to human use, Photographs can also provide information about specific species that have been removed due to human use in the past, but are now being reclaimed by nature due to conservation efforts. And you'll see this later on. So we have black diamond mines in the 1900s, and we have black diamond mines now. And you can see that this land is being reclaimed by nature after it had been removed by man, and now it is coming back. So again, this is just another example of how photographs can give evidence of change in the ecosystem. So limitations to historic documents. And the question is, what are two limitations to human-made historical documents? And historical documents, writings, drawings, photographs are not as old as other sources of evidence like soil, pollen, or tree. So that's one limitation, is that these are only for specific times when people were doing the writing, the drawing, or the photograph, and they don't tend to go back further than when the humans were here. So it doesn't show long-term or old change in ecosystems. The information from these sources is very limited and can only tell what people saw or what they did. So it doesn't go beyond the scope of what people did or saw or pictured. We're going to read two primary sources. I'm actually going to read them as you read along, and we'll record information in the chart that is in your activity. So these are records of two Spanish missionaries traveling in Contra Costa County in the 1700s. So we'll look at this one first, read it and record some information, and then we'll look at this one. Okay, so let's go ahead and read this one. So let me get my laser pointer so that you can follow along. So these journals provide clues as to what land looked like and what human practices were shaping the land at that time. So, Spanish journal entry from the 1700s. The following excerpts were taken from the journals of Spanish missionaries and from leaders of the California in the 1700s. At that time, Spain claimed ownership of California, but the region's population was predominantly the California Indians. So this entry was by Governor Fernando Rivera y Moncada. Fernando Rivera y Moncada served as the Spain's regional governor of California in the mid-1700s. The following entry comes from his journal. And what we're going to do is we're going to record two human activities from this journal into your worksheet. So that would be the worksheet that looks like this. So let's go ahead and go back and read this. So, 1776. In the countryside, there is an extreme need of pasture for the animals, all occasioned by great fires of the Indians who, not having to care for more than their bellies, burn the fields as soon as they gather up their seeds. So two human activities. Well, one might be pasture for animals. So the Spaniards wanted pasture for the animals, but they weren't able to get as much because the Indians they were setting fires so that they could clear the brush so that they could hunt better, and also so that they could keep out unwanted plants that they didn't want, and so they could plant what they wanted. So those are two possible human activities. We have farming, we have pasturelands that are going on. So go ahead and record those two things in this answer place here. If you need more time, please stop the video. Moving on, now we're moving into our second document, and you're going to record those answers here. So read the journal entry from Father Juan Crispy. Record 4 natural features, 1, 2, 3, 4, in the table underneath heading Natural Features of the Ecosystem at the time. So I will go ahead and read this, and then you can stop the video to record your 4 features, or you can be recording them as I read along. So Father Juan Crispy was a Spanish missionary and explorer. He recorded these entries in his journal while traveling through what is now California. So August 1769. We went overland that was well covered with fine grasses and very large clumps of very tall, broad grass, burnt in some spots and not in others. We went almost all the way over salt grasses, all very much burnt off by the Indians, with some descents into dry creeks. On going about a league and a half, we reached a stream with good amounts of fresh water emptying into the sea, but no village nor soil of any worth upon it. The soldiers had scattered up to this point, and it was not a full day's march, nor was there grass for the animals, as it had all been burned off. May 1770. At once after setting out, we commenced to find the fields all abloom. As many as were the flowers we had been meeting on the way and on the channel, it was not such a plenty as here, for it is all one mass of blossom, great quantities of white, yellow, red, purple, and blue ones, many yellow, violets or gillyflowers of the sort that were planted in gardens, a great deal of larkspur, poppy, and sage in blooms, and what graced the fields most of all was the sight of all the different sorts of colors together. On this whole march we have seen not a bush. So what you're going to do is record 4 natural features that were in this writing. All right, that can be flowers, not seeing bushes. So go ahead and record those. Now we are moving into our last feature, which is how do you think the human activities at this time changed the grasslands? So now you need to reflect on how you think the human activities at that time changed the grasslands. And you need to consider some things. So for example, why do you think California Indians burned the fields? And the Indians used controlled burns on the grasslands after they harvested the plants they wanted. The burns reduced the number of shrubs and trees and prevented the grasslands from changing into woodlands. By burning the lands, the native Indians stopped the natural ecological succession of grasslands to woodlands. And that allowed them to hunt easier. It also allowed them to cultivate the grasses or the plants that they did want. Stop their video and record your answer. So how do you think the human activities affected? And again, that's some of the things you can also mention again that the Spaniards were using the grasslands for grazing. The Spaniards were using the grasslands for grazing, which again, that changed the ecosystem of the grasslands also. Moving on. Now we're into the 1840s and 1850s. So this map was drawn by a landowner in the 1840s before California was a state and before the gold rush of 1850. So this is a close-up. And we want you to stop the video and record your answer. Record one land use that is indicated in this map. So one land use, and if you look, we have a landowner's house, we have an Indian's house, we have a creek, we have another creek, San Lorenzo Creek, we have mountains, we have a mission, we have a dry riverbed, we have a lake, we have an animal pen, and we have the San Francisco Bay, which was the Sacramento or San Joaquin River. So what are some of the land uses that you see here? Well, we do see this, and some of the things are not marked, but this is more of an agriculture, so it looks like that they actually were growing trees in certain areas, and you can see that from this indication right here, which looks like it's some kind of bedding for plants of some type. So record at least one land use, and we also mention the houses and stuff, that's uses of the land. Record 4 natural features, and then record 4 natural features like mountains, lakes, riverbeds, rivers. Okay, this map was made of the same area in 1855, 5 years after California became a state. It was drawn by a United States government surveyor. So you can stop the video if you need to, and you're going to record two different land uses that were indicated in this map. So you're just drawing two, and you're recording one natural feature. So you recorded 4 last time, you should have 1 spot left, and you recorded 1 land use last time, so now you're recording 2 other ones. So here, again, we have the same sorts of things: San Francisco Bay, we have a salt marsh, we have a strawberry patch, which was probably a man-made feature, we have melons and corn, we have the San Leandro Creek, we have the mountains, ruins of an old adobe Indian house, old corral used for keeping animals, we have wheat fields, corn and beans, an old road, and ruins of a Estradillo house. So you're going to record at least 2 different land uses and record one natural feature. So now we get down to the harder part. You need to reflect on how you think the human activities at that time changed the grasslands. So I want you to consider these things. Address the following questions. How did ranching affect the grasslands? How did farming affect the grasslands? And how did moving water for farming affect vegetation and animal habitats? Let's go back and look at that. So they did make, they did use creek water, and they did make ponds with it. Here, probably a man-made lake. So how did that affect? Now we get into the photographic evidence. This photograph shows Summersville town site in Antioch in the 1885s, and coal mining started there around 1860, and it went all the way to about 1950. It stopped being a coal mine though, it became a sand mine, but mining was done in the area all the way up until 1955 or so. So stop the video and record evidence about 3 human activities, 1, 2, 3, 2 natural features, and how you think the human activity changed the grasslands. Consider buildings, trees, grassland locations, rivers, creeks, etc. Okay, so again, you can imagine it was grasslands before, and now we have all these structures, man-made structures that went in. So how did that, what are some activities at the time with these structures? We have a road here. There is actually a creek that runs through, that was right here, that they were getting water from. There's actually a cemetery. If you've been out to Black Diamond Mines, there's a Rose Cemetery, which is up on the hill. And then, of course, we have the mining operation where dirt was brought out. So natural features for the area, again, just look at natural things like the hill. There is some vegetation, right? There are trees. I don't know how many of these are natural or how many of these were brought in, because they did bring in their own trees. And there is a creek bed. And so how do you think these activities affected this grassland? So this photograph shows Summersville town site now in Antioch in 1985, after all mining operations had been closed for about 35 years. So I want you to stop the video and record 3 human activities, 3 natural features, and then consider how human activities at this time changed the grasslands. Okay, so in this one, this is actually an example of the opposite, where things have reclaimed, the natural grasslands are reclaimed. This is what we call a restoration site. But there are still human buildings here. All right, there is if you've been there, there's a ranger center. They changed the mine is now visitor center. And there are still roads in this area. But now this area is being used for other things. All right, so if you've been to Black Diamond Mines, you know that it's being used for hiking. So there's hiking trails. There's also bike riding trails. So people can come out here and bird watch, right? And it is an area of learning for the environment. So those are human activities. Natural features. You can see that if you go back, you can see that the natural features some have remained the same, but some have increased. So there's still hills and grasslands, but vegetation has totally changed. So how do you think the human activities of this time have changed the grasslands? So think about how things are changed from here to here. So you've finished this activity now. Summary of the main points. The Spanish journal entries from the 1700s gave clues of human activities in the grasslands and natural features of the grasslands at this time. Maps of the same land are drawn in 1840 and 1855, give clues about the change in human activities on the land and a change in the appearance of the land. Pictures of towns of Summersville at the Black Diamond Mines in Antioch gave clues about a change in the activities of the land from 1885 to 1985 and a change in the natural features. So if you need to review that, you can go and talk to your science teacher more. So these primary sources have given evidence that human activities affect local ecosystems, and that was the point of this. So the next activity is on the cumulative and synergistic effects on grasslands. And you need to record what does synergistic effects on a grassland mean. So human activities can have a cumulative effect on an ecosystem. If two or more factors affect the same ecosystem, those two things can have a synergistic or cumulative effect that can cause greater changes in the sum of the individual than the sum of the individual effects. So the fact that there was mining, the fact that there was building of human habitats which encroached on an area, those are synergistic effects. We have the mining, which is bringing out dirt, and then we have the destruction of an ecosystem due to building houses and roads, and that can affect the plants and animals living in an ecosystem. And that is the synergistic effect. So do you think that human effects at Summersville town site are long-term or short-term? So do you think the effects that happen there are going to be long-lasting? Or do you think that they are only short-term? And again, in the history of the world, you got to look at what is long-term and short-term. So thousands of years can go by. That can be long-term. Short-term might only be 50 or 60 years, which is the lifetime of a person. That concludes this activity. If you have any further questions, please talk to your science teacher.